So thanks, everyone. Yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting panel as well. So to start off, I'd like to go down the line here and have each of you talk for a minute or two and just kind of offer what's the best example of how your respective organizations are using technology right now to improve or to improve the customer experience or customer service.
Yeah. So you know what? If I, like my other speakers, didn't hit on. Now you can hear me better, right? There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, so a little bit of context. So I'm the director of San Jose's Office of Civic Innovation and Digital Strategy, and we've heard a lot of definitions of what is innovation. So my office has a pretty broad mandate because we define innovation as, is it causing a lot of people pain? Is it core to what a city can or should do? And can you solve it with data or technology? And at the intersection of that Venn diagram is what my office does. So something I'm going to talk about to answer your question is my office has our broadband and digital inclusion portfolio, our digital services portfolio, our IoT and smart cities portfolio. I think in the capital of Silicon Valley, people think everybody's connected. We've got fiber coming out of our ears, right? We've got 500 gigabits, gigabits download speed. And actually what we found out is we're in the bottom quartile of our peers in terms of connectivity. So you couldn't even download a high definition video on your smartphone 2 years ago. So connectivity across the city was poor, and we had an amazingly large digital divide. We have 50,000 households that are not connected at home at all, and another 50,000 that are unconnected. So one of the way that we think about engagement or customer experience is in 3 buckets. It's connect, include, and then engage. And if you're not connected, you're not servicing all of your city. So we recently announced the creation of a $24 million digital inclusion fund that's actually, the revenue is being generated from the lease of our 5G deployment infrastructure on our street infrastructure. And we have selected the California Emerging Technology Fund as our implementation partner. We found out that in our population there's concern over privacy, over immigration, over Big Brother. So we've selected California Emerging Technology Fund to help us implement our Digital Inclusion Fund, but we're going to do it through grants out to community-based organizations. So it's going to be the Hispanic Community Center, the Senior Center, who's going to be implementing this and making it much more acceptable to the community. So that's one way that we're going about it. Our city council and our mayor, with our smart city strategy, says connectivity is important to the society as a whole. It's basically the 5th utility. And with over 100,000 people, with 12% of our population not being able to take advantage of that home, that's not acceptable, and it's not creating an inclusive society.
Okay. Stephanie, do you want to?
Sure. So first, kudos to Dolan, of course, and the work that he's done around digital inclusion. My office, which is the Office of Broadband and Digital Literacy within the Department of Technology, we actually focus on the infrastructure. We focus on the broadband access and adoption throughout the state. And without this broadband access and adoption, there would be no way possible, of course, that we can access, or the citizens can access, the digital services that we're talking about today, that can access the right solutions and services for the key drivers such as public safety, which we heard about earlier in this session. That's so important, of course, to emergency services. So the work that we do, of course, is through a Broadband Council. It's a 9-member council that does include 2 legislative members. And through that council, we have 3 task forces, and we're actually adding 3 more because of the importance of broadband access and adoption in this state. Specifically, from a numbers perspective, the goals that we have for 2023 are we are looking at 98% access across the state and 90% adoption across the state, again, by the year 2023. Now, I have to admit, given my private background, I thought 2023 is forever. That's a lot. That's a lot of time. Now that I've come to the state, of course, given the intricacies and the great effort that we do have towards closing the digital divide, I think we'll be able to make it, but we do have dedicated effort toward that. A couple other statistics that I do want to share with you is that where are we today, right? How are we measuring against that goal? So while we're achieving toward 98%, today we're at about 95.5%. So that represents about 1.4 million citizens. So I don't want the numbers to miscue kind of the progress that we have, but there's so much work that we really need to do in this space. Over 2 million citizens only have access to one provider. So what that means is affordability is critical to make sure that we have the right access. Now, the Broadband Council actually focuses on rural areas, and that does include tribal lands. And again, that doesn't discount the amount of work that we need to do in urban areas, as Dolan was mentioning, because there's also a gap, of course, in urban areas. But again, that emphasizes the work that we need to do. One more point that I wanted to mention is that 25% of the tribes are unserved, completely unserved. And don't forget that in order to have broadband access or high-speed internet connection, you need to have electricity. So many of the tribes don't have electricity. So the challenge that we have as a state, right, the commitment that we need to make to these citizens in the various populations and areas is definitely huge. And that's where we want to make sure that we're very in touch with the citizens, whether it be from a socioeconomic level, regardless of whether they're in urban or suburban areas. And that's what the Broadband Council focuses on doing.
Rita, do you want to?
Yes, it's working, right? Is my mic working? Can you guys hear? Yeah. Okay. So my name is Rita Goss, and I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Secretary of State. In May 8th, 2018, the Secretary of State launched our Eureka chatbot. This is Eureka chatbot. Eureka chatbot is the first state-level department and agency to use Microsoft artificial intelligence framework for customer engagement. The Eureka has been very, very popular because when we launched Eureka, it was to help to make sure that the Secretary of State is scalable to serve the most populated state in the nation. Mm-hmm. So Eureka is designed and created to make sure that the users are able to navigate the Secretary of State website in an efficient and easy manner to get information related to business programs and trademarks. So we created Eureka, and it has been very, very popular and successful because it serves the customers and it serves the public for California 24/7. I have a question. What do you think is the most famous question they ask for the Eureka chatbot?
I have no idea.
Can anyone ask? What do you think is the most popular questions that we get? It's
about the bear.
yeah. Actually, they do ask about the bear, what the bear's favorite color is, the age of the bear. But the most famous question is, how do I open business in California? So it's very important why with the Eureka chatbot has been successful for the Secretary of State.
Mm-hmm. And just so people have a better understanding too, what are some other, are there a couple other examples of questions that people might ask the chatbot and then responses they might get? Like what are some other queries they might punch in?
Yes, so currently the Eureka chatbot is very specific to our business programs division to answers business-related and trademarks-related question. So there's a lot of questions like, how can I find my businesses? So it connects to our business search to provide them what forms to use, what forms to fill out, and it also helps understand how these forms are being filled out online or on paper. And what they do is that it actually eliminated some of the issues that people can't get, because when you want to open up a business in California, you don't want to wait between 8 to 5 for your questions to be answered. So they go online and ask the pertinent questions to make sure that they could file their business immediately.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And so one of the other things I wanted to talk about a little bit is, with technology, how do you make sure that and this will probably be a different response for each of you because you do very different things, but how do you make sure that the technology you're adopting or building, that it's actually stuff that people want, that it's actually like getting at what citizens want in the end? Like, how do you go about determining that? Dolan, I don't know if there's anything you want to start off with.
Yeah, I can kind of start off with what San Jose did. So we, we thought about, as we were thinking about moving from connect to include and then engage, we thought about different ways of doing it, and we decided to take what we'll call the United Kingdom model, which is we didn't develop a strategy, we didn't overthink it, we spent $300,000 and we developed the My San Jose app, which you can see right here, and we took our top 6 services, report a streetlight outage, report a pothole, ones like that, and we threw ourselves into the digital era, right? All we had before then was a 1990s website that, if you're lucky, I'll show you how bad it is. And so this threw us into the digital services era. And then we took it, an agile and iterative approach. We paused, and we told our council, we're going to pause, and we're going to see lessons learned. And after that, we had a lot of lessons learned. So we created a UI UX team that does usability testing. We co-located the technology development with the UIX team in my office, which made everyone's head explode initially, especially our CIO, but it worked great because then you were actually having people talking to the users, people thinking about usability, and the folks that actually have to implement it, iterating real time together to make things done faster. Then we started to develop usability standards, testing standards, and that's kind of the way we went about it. So we kind of didn't develop a strategy. We jumped right in, we learned from that, and now we have a small but nimble team that meets not only with proxies for the customers, because staff are great about thinking they know what the customer wants. Then you go out and you actually talk to the customer, and sometimes it's different. So we talk to our staff, which is our proxy. Then we also, fortunately, we're consolidated in City Hall. So we can just go to the 3rd floor to public services or go to the 1st floor to development services and ask a customer if they want to do some usability testing, and that's how we've done it.
And then how did you go about deciding which services you initially put on the app, and then how are you gathering feedback now that it's out there and live to make improvements? What's the process? Yeah,
we stack rank prioritization. It's governance in any jurisdictional body is challenging. So we always say, well, this is the stack rank priority, and the stack rank priority was based on volume. So we actually stack rank things based on the volume of transactions that were being done, their economic impact, and how much pain they were causing. As you can see, I like things in 3s that in a second Venn diagram. So interestingly enough, adopt a pet is the #1 transaction on our website. An example of the way it was worded was animal services. So people who spoke a different language, Hispanic or one of the Chinese languages, would look at that and go, is animal services about adopting a pet, or is it about the zoo? So one of the lessons learned was make it simple. Adopt a pet, everyone understood whether or not you spoke the English language. Animal services was very confusing, and we got a lot of feedback. So we kind of took a stack ranked approach based on the volume of the transactions, the amount of feedback we were getting that people didn't understand them, and then also kind of like the overall economic impact of the city of having them not clear.
Right, okay. Stephanie, is there anything you wanted to add there?
Sure. So for the state, it's a little bit of a different role. In particular, I hope that's not me, sorry. First of all, I don't have a prop or a bear or anything, so I feel like I maybe missed that memo. But in essence, what's important for the state is that we actually ask for the feedback, that we have the right communication channels to have that feedback. And I think this has been a new concept for many of the stakeholder groups who we see as our customers. In particular, the 2 groups that I'm thinking about, of course, are the tribal members and the regional consortia. So what we've done is we've established online surveys for those that can access the survey, and we also, of course, have the survey via email and even manual, because we really want to have that feedback. The state in particular, specifically my Office of Broadband and Digital Literacy, we're here to be advocates of these customer groups. And we can't be the right advocate if we don't have the right information and data to be very closely attuned to what their needs are. So we've established these communication channels, and what's interesting, as I said in the beginning, is they're not really used to providing that feedback at the state level, but we continue to make sure that that channel of communication is open. The second thing that we do is we do leverage technology, of course, that's available to the state. We're leveraging Microsoft Teams to be able to work very closely together within our task forces. That adoption of those systems are new, and of course, we're also looking at typical traditional email, so it might not be as cutting edge from a local standpoint, but again, we want to make sure that we're asking the right questions, the feedback channels are there, and it's an ongoing loop so we can continue that conversation, making sure that we're the right advocate for our customer group.
I just want to follow up there. So I'm just trying to think through. I mean, so if the main mission is to provide greater internet connectivity to people, high-speed broadband. I mean, that seems like, I'm just trying to think through what types of feedback you would get, because I would think like most people would be like, I want high-speed internet, and like that's the end of the feedback. So like, what do you hear beyond that, I guess?
So I like that. So thank you. That actually helps me provide more specificity in my answer. Everybody wants to have high-speed internet. Everybody deserves, of course, to have world-class high-speed internet, although the average right now is at 10 down. The federal level standard is 25 down, 3 up. And then the state number, of course, to define served is 6 down, 1 up. And it's not going to be adequate for 21st century learning and living. So again, how do we make sure that we're serving those customers? Well, number one, from a tribal perspective, what we're looking for is a baseline of information. A baseline of information that we've never had before. So we're looking at, again, basics. Do you have access? Are you served or are you underserved? And if you have access, who are the providers in your area? Now again, this has a different set of dynamics for the tribes because they might not have online connection or the right methods of communication to the state. But we're looking for that baseline of information to them. We're also looking for, do you have IT experience or consultants within your tribes? There's a cultural sensitivity that we have to be aware of when we're talking to this customer group. For the regional consortia in particular, it's just as you said, we went through an exercise specifically with providing feedback to Caltrans and CPUC around strategic corridors, because ideally we're laying fiber, right? Fiber is the most reliable, provides the best performance. So where is the feedback? We just had a meeting, actually, we had the Broadband Council meeting on July 18th, and prior to that, we actually had a strategic corridors meeting at the end of June. The feedback from Caltrans and CPUC was, everybody said everywhere was a priority. The entire state is a priority. So how do we narrow down that feedback? And that's the exact role that the Broadband Council, and in particular my office, is looking to provide, that advocacy to say back to the regional consortia, by the way, because I want to make sure everybody understands regional consortia, or there's 17 regional consortia that was established by the CPUC, and that's to provide that specific citizen level, regional level feedback for the state. So in those conversations, that's again the role that we're playing really in concert with our partner CETF to make sure that there's clear feedback, that there truly is a priority, and that their voices are heard at the right level and the right department agency so we can move the needle.
Yeah, and a yes and to that. From a city perspective, especially in San Jose, we're a little different in that the actual technology exists. But to answer your question, we actually went out to the underserved community. We engaged a company that does text surveys using the phone, where my prop is, because even homeless people have a smartphone, right? And they have some degree of connectivity. In San Jose, you will see homeless people with smartphone all over the place. I see some, really? Yeah. And so we conducted a survey of we actually got 2,000 residents in San Jose who had household income less than $35,000 that had a child in school, and asked them a 20-question tech survey. You basically got a $10 certificate from Target. We had people who spoke Vietnamese, Chinese, and Spanish, going around high places of those populations. And what we found back was that the barrier wasn't the access to the technology itself. It was what you thought, the cost of the device, the cost of the access, but third, it was safety. And that was really interesting to us, is I am afraid of cyberbullying. I am afraid of my identity, so seniors, so I'm afraid of cyberbullying, parents. Seniors, I'm afraid of my identity being stolen. undocumented immigrants. 40% of San Jose was born outside the United States. I'm afraid of the information being reported to the federal authorities. So it was the whole digital literacy aspect of it that became number 3 on our list. And the way we did it was by actually figuring out how can we reach that population. And we reached it through texting, which they have pretty much universal access, and asked them the question, do you have access at home or not? Why not? And it was really insightful information.
Yeah. That's actually, oh, sorry, really
Good
quick. So that's
no,
actually a really good point, because the majority of the users, of course, of the internet, which must be noted, if we're talking about citizen-centric experiences, is on mobile phones. So the majority of experiences on mobile phones, which really doesn't lend to a full experience on desktop computers or even laptops. So it's really something to note as the city or the state or organizations or vendors tend to build out, of course, their applications, and they're thinking about that user experience.
And actually, sorry, I'm suffering from a cold, so actually, broadband internet cell is very important to the success of Eureka chatbot, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why we created Eureka chatbot, so that when they needed to answer questions, they don't have to go call. They can just use their cell phone, check what the answers are. And also, Eureka is part of the Secretary Alex Padilla's digital initiative to modernize the Secretary of State, so that we could, in lieu to having to promote business in California, to make it easy to do business in California. Mm-hmm. So when our challenges with Eureka when we first started is that when you create your FAQs for the customers, for the users, it's different from what you do with the artificial intelligence. So that's where it took us some time. And the success of Eureka is important that you engage your business. The people, not just IT by itself, but this 80% of success of artificial intelligence is through the business. And actually, I have my partner here, who is the Chief of Business Programs Division, the success of Eureka, Betsy Bogart. I wanted to call her out. Her team is very successful. They are the ones who knows the customer, right? So when we created the answers for Eureka, the more you ask questions about the business, about anything, the more the artificial intelligence becomes intelligent. It's important that the way you phrase it, the way you present it to the customer is, they only have seconds to do it. If you don't answer it correctly, if you don't put it out there the way they wanted to see it, it then loses their attention. So it's important that, with the new people coming, the millennials and all the Generation Z are coming in, it's important that you tailor your artificial intelligence to that, to be specific and not just the regular business of creating an FAQ.
How can you tell if the chatbot is actually getting smarter in a way that's helping customers better? Are there metrics that you use to measure that? Like, how do you? Yeah.
Yes. Basically, we have a small database in the back end that takes all the questions and ranks it. The users has the ability to say whether it's helpful or not helpful. Mm-hmm. So when they say it's not helpful, then we tailor those questions. So basically, we keep on either tailoring the questions or the answers to the specific questions that's not helping them. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's pretty iterative process. And also we did an iterative approach when we implemented the Eureka chatbot. We started it with just plain simple FAQ answers, and then we're building it up. The next phase of our Eureka chatbot is going to be multi-language, and then also including emotional, like if they're kind of like upset that it's not being answered, we can eventually direct them to a person. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of pathways that this chatbot can do in the future.
That's really interesting. So with some of the time we have left, the framing of this panel promised, I think if I'm remembering the description right, practical tips. And so I was hoping we could maybe talk a little bit about what your best practical tip is for people who work in agencies or departments, when it comes to implementing technology in a way that is useful to customers, like just lessons learned in your work.
Yeah, so from City of San Jose's perspective, find a digital services champion in the organization that can take the heat of just get started. Mm-hmm. The second would be just get started and set expectations you're going to learn, because I hate to quote Donald Rumsfeld, but you don't know what you don't know, right? And so there's a lot of things we didn't know and now we do. Some of the practical lessons learned was the co-location of the UI, UX, and developers was key. I mean, that was, whether it's what Karen Sebelius learned from healthcare.gov or what 18F learned, it really works, right? Co-locate them together, as painful as that may be physically.
Just really quick, Dawn, I want to jump in there. Why is that, for people who maybe aren't as familiar with the work that you do, why is that so important? Why is it important to have those people all in the same place?
It's because what the ultimate design for usability and accessibility and getting things done quickly and building trust with your customer may not necessarily be easily implemented in the technology. Mm-hmm. So the co-location allows for that real-time collaboration. I think some of the lessons learned going back 20 or 30 years is the fact you had a great user interface that you couldn't implement, or it became so expensive to implement that everything was wound up being custom. We've gone to the point now where we're starting to break up our procurements in that there's either a milestone or a separate procurement for the usability and then for the technology implementation. Because the first one we did, we kind of broke the technology quite a bit, and now we're going for the second iteration of a technology platform, and here's the usability, here's the UI standards, the UX standards, here's sample designs. Have someone come in and help us with that, because you can't do it all internally usually in the city. And then based on that, then we'll say, here's what you have to implement. Now, who's the best technology vendor to implement it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Stephanie, practical tips for the folks out there doing work similar to yours. Yeah.
Sure. I think from the state perspective, I can hone in about 3 different things that makes it important to help achieve broadband access and adoption across the state. The first one, of course, would be ask for the feedback. Be open and ask for the feedback to make sure that we know where we're at. And the second thing, of course, is to find that common ground. Everybody knows that we do want high-speed internet access across the state, but we have to find the common ground, whether it be a regional consortia, whether it be a provider, whether it be a department or agency, and that's really important. And of course, moving forward, then take a collaborative approach. To achieve broadband access across the state, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. It will depend, of course, on the region, on the topography, whether the right solution is going to be underground or overground. So it's important to have those conversations, again, with the common ground, and to be able to understand what the right solution is for that area.
And Rita, yeah, so if somebody wanted to take on a project like the chatbot, what would your advice be for them heading into something like that?
So the number one advice is make it fun, okay? So this is the reason why this is so popular. 2 things. An IT, to be successful, it doesn't have to be a very large IT project. And to gain, all the awards that we're having. Eureka chatbot was done by a business program staff and 1 IT developers, and of course the Microsoft framework. That is the content of the whole thing. So, but make it fun. When Secretary of State deployed a Eureka chatbot, we engaged all the business program staff to name the bear. One of the staff actually created the image of the bear. So by having that fun, there was a very good buy-in with our internal staff as well as the users. And also you do it in a phase approach. You don't do it all at once. So what we did actually is when we rolled it out, we first used it with our customer service folks who are answering the phone. So instead of looking at their notes, they're actually typing in the question to the bear, and then see what the answer is and saying it back to the customer. So that's how we did our testing. So we didn't put it out all at once. So we did it internal, and then once we did it external, we do it slowly. So right now, it's very focused on programs division, but in the future, we'll put it in elections and all our other programs. So but it's fun. Everybody's excited about it. Also, the lessons learned. This is mostly more of a questions and answer. But we're now Secretary of State. We're looking into more of artificial intelligence, not just for the chatbot, but other things that we're gaining from what we learned from the chatbot. We're using it to enhance to other types of artificial intelligence. So there is a lot of ways you can do this. Not just this. This is the beginning, and this is very successful. But there's a lot of things now that we know we will be doing in the future.
Is there anything you can share there in terms of what those future projects might look like, or?
Well, just specific for Eureka chatbot, we're going to do a multi-language. We're going to do emotional. I forgot the term, but to make sure that, and also integration with all our systems. Mm-hmm. So we have different systems right now. We have a lot of projects going on. Also, just a lot of things going.
Okay. Dolan, actually, there's one thing I wanted to circle back on. You were talking about the survey, reaching out to the community and getting community feedback earlier. You mentioned the Target gift certificate, and the reason I bring it up is because something I was thinking about here is, in terms of gathering that feedback. I mean, especially when you're talking about residents, it seems like it could be tough, right, to get people to provide it in the first place. Do you find that that's an issue, or how do you go about it? I mean, the gift certificate is maybe a way to incentivize it, but how do you go about incentivizing people to participate?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different segmentation. So, like on our website and on sanjose.ca.gov and My San Jose, we actually proactively ask for feedback. Mm-hmm. Do you like this? Do you not like this? And fill in what you do and do not like. So we are building a database of feedback, but it kind of gets to the other focus on just connectivity is for those people who aren't necessarily connected, mm-hmm. Or are underconnected. How do you get out to them? Yeah. And so that's where, I think on the previous panel, it was like, don't give generic answers or don't generalize. And that's what we had to do in this case, is we have to kind of look at each channel and each type of engagement and what's the best way to collect feedback. And some of it's the brute force out canvassing the shopping mall. And some of it is, the Oracle Cloud database behind the My San Jose that collects all this information.
Right, so it really takes a mix of tactics to get that data.
It takes a village, yeah.
Yeah, right on. All right, well, that's about all we have time for, so I appreciate you guys taking the time, and great conversation. Thank you.